With me today is Andrew Young. Andrew is Chief Commercial Officer at Baja Aqua Farms Group. Hi, Andrew, and welcome to Seafood Matters. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you. Very much my pleasure. Andrew, can you explain to our listeners your role within Baja Aqua Farms Group?
Sure. I joined Baja Aquafarms in August of 2024. And my role is the Chief Commercial Officer. So, what does that mean? I look after all of our sales around the globe. Also take care of all of our marketing efforts as we try to build out our Bluefina brand. And we have a sales operations team as well that manages the sales from the farm to the customer. So those are my primary roles within the company.
Excellent. If I could just maybe divert a wee bit for a second.
Sure.
What I find not strange, but obviously your farms are in Mexico and that area. I'm talking to Andrew Young.
Hmm.
A name like Andrew Young, I feel I'm talking to a fellow Scot.
Well, I grew up on the farthest eastern part of Canada, island called Newfoundland, which is
Oh, yeah.
famous for its fishing. And yeah, my family heritage is probably a mix of English, Irish, and Scottish. Um, so you're right in your sense of the name.
Wonderful, wonderful. And what was your career path that led you to joining the company?
Sure. Well, my first job out of MBA school was with a company called McCain Foods, who you're probably familiar with that brand
Oh,
because
yeah,
it's
yeah.
it's it's throughout the UK and Europe. It's actually a global brand. It's a frozen food company, mostly known as the world's largest French fry producer. And they recruited me out of school. I worked for them for 20 plus years in both sales and marketing roles. And I was recruited by a company called Cook Seafood, who's also a Canadian based company. That was my first foray into the seafood side of the business. I worked for them for a number of years. And left Cook to join Baja Aqua Farms in, like I said, August of 2024. So most of my career was the first half of my career was in consumer packaged goods, and then the last 10 plus years have been on the seafood side of the business.
Okay, yeah. Can you explain what modern ocean farming actually means in practical terms?
Well, as you know, we have a unique go-to-market strategy with our product. So it's a mix of both a wild fishery and then an aquaculture piece. Uh, Obviously, to your question, we play in what I feel is a very modern part of the industry. And what do I mean by that? Our farms are offshore farms, so they're nowhere near land. Um, our farm today is almost 10 miles, um, sort of triangulate from Tijuana, Mexico, or San Diego, USA. So we're about 10 miles out. As I'm sure you and your listeners know, um, a lot of the new technology and new frontiers around the aquaculture side um, of seafood is trying to push farms away from the shore. We're already doing that, so we are what I would say is on on the cutting edge of the aquaculture side of the business. We're also unique in the sense that we combine both the wild fishery and aquaculture in how we raise our fish and bring them to market. So what we're doing at Baja Aqua Farms is like I said, leading edge, and is really from an aquaculture perspective, the future of where aquaculture is going.
When you talk about 10 mile roughly out to sea,
Hmm.
the first thing that comes to my mind is that have you any shelter or is it completely exposed?
No, we our farm is next to a group of islands called the Coronado Islands. Now, there's two sets of Coronado Islands. There's one on the U.S., but this is the Coronado Islands on the in Mexican waters. So we do have shelter, um, but again, it's shelter on one side of the farm. The farm is largely exposed to the open ocean waters, and that, of course, provides many challenges to raising our fish. But wild bluefin, um, wild bluefin, and in and where we have our farm set up today, we've found waters that have shelter, as you've mentioned, but also have excellent tide structure. So the tides there are very favorable to farming bluefin. The oxygen levels of the water are very favorable to farming bluefin. The depth of the water, very favorable. So again, you really have to try to find that perfect spot when you are that far out, in order to um, in order to have an environment where the fish thrive while they're living on that farm.
You mentioned before earlier what you've been in our Shetland Isles and Orkney Isles. Do you see a similarity when you talk about the currents, tides, and that? Would you say there's a similarity there?
Yeah, I think any aquaculture business, you're trying to find that perfect environment. Um, Whether it's salmon farming or whether it's cod farming, or in our case, bluefin tuna farming, you do have to find that perfect environment where you can where the fish can thrive. And any one of those elements that don't work, whether it be, like I said, oxygen levels, or whether it's tides, or whether it's in some cases, there are um, there are places that have licenses, as an example, in Scotland on the salmon side, that are absolutely perfect in terms of some of those elements, but the weather is just so bad that you can't physically farm there. So weather, water temperature, oxygen levels, depth, all of those things are elements that you need to be working together in order to provide a viable aquaculture site.
And I take it, does it, am I right in saying the tides and the currents and that help form the muscle and that's a benefit?
Absolutely. You really want the fish to be living in as natural of an environment as you can provide.
Yeah.
And so trying to emulate that is the key. Um, but within that, you also certainly, a topic that everyone talks about in seafood today is El Nino, and what effect that will have on various wild and aquacultural fisheries around the world. And water temperature is the one variable that can really make or break a farm or a wild fishery, of course. And so this year will be especially challenging, I think, for many fisheries around the world, whether it be wild caught or whether it be aquaculture based, in terms of what that water temperature does and what the impact is on the fish and the metabolism of the fish and mortalities, or how fast they grow. Or in our case, we are the only, I call it a farm, other people call it a ranch. We're the only ranching operation in the entire world that only feeds our bluefin tuna fresh. We feed our fish fresh sardines. So the
Yeah.
migratory pattern of Pacific bluefin tuna, when they are in the uh, Baja, California, Mexican waters, they are there to catch and eat sardines. That's what they're there for in their migratory pattern. So we emulate that on the ranch or on the farm. We have our own sardine fleet. We have 14 vessels, and we fish fresh sardines every day, and we deliver those back to the farm. But as I said when I started talking about this, we're the only ranching business in the world that does that. And I not only think, but I know that that leads to probably the best bluefin tuna that you can eat anywhere, because that comes out in the
Yeah.
quality of the fish. Yeah.
It sounds to me, Andrew, like if you had a problem and some of the cages were damaged, the tuna inside are going to say, doesn't matter if we can go, we're not going anywhere. This is
Yeah.
too good. This is too
Yeah.
good to leave.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly.
And also, I wonder when you say close to their natural environment, the fact that
Mhm.
you're going as far away as you're talking about, away from the coast, and that you would almost be in that position that you're farming them in their natural environment.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, when we so when you think about our business, we're both a wild fishery business and an aquaculture business, as I said before. When we catch our bluefin tuna, in many cases, actually, we just finished the latest tranche of our fishing season. The tuna that we caught in the last couple of weeks were no more than 10 miles from the farm itself. So that is very much their natural habitat. That our farm is part of the migratory pattern that they go through. So the wild bluefin actually swim by our farm. So
Wow.
again,
Okay.
it is very much a natural environment for them. Not only the waters and the
Yeah.
water temperature, but most importantly the feed that they're after.
It's amazing. Incredible. See, with seafood farm, and obviously it's evolved enormously over the last 2 decades. Well,
Yeah.
certainly here it has. What changes have impressed you most?
In terms of, sorry,
Just the
can you?
changes over the last 2 decades, or the time that you've been involved. Have you seen a lot of changes?
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. You think one of the biggest changes. I'm sure you've talked to previous guests about this, but is the change in the sustainability practices of the business overall. Not only the wild fishery, but most importantly, the aquaculture side of the business. So, and sustainability is a big word and it means many things, but, fish welfare is very important. So, stocking densities of farms that you have, we have very low stocking density on our farms, which of course allows the fish to thrive. In terms of feed, as I mentioned earlier, we only feed 100% natural. So that's something that I talk to customers a lot about. But the rest of the aquaculture business around the world is obviously made tremendous strides in terms of what they're feeding their fish. Um, um, and uh, things like disease. We don't have any disease on our farm because again, it's in a natural environment, and we only feed natural feed. But again, if you expand out to whether it be the shrimp business or the salmon business, obviously many of those businesses have made tremendous progress in terms of the quality of the fish from a sustainability perspective, and that's driven by two main factors. One is NGOs and their pressure to ensure that the aquaculture businesses around the world are sustainable. But the other side is quite frankly just from the consumer. So from the consumer side, they obviously demand more sustainable products. That's not just specific to seafood, of course. You see it across beef or chicken or poultry, whatever the industry. Well, seafood has had to make many changes so that they are selling products to consumers that consumers want. So I would say more than anything, it's just the incredible change in sustainability practices overall.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and there's still a lot of work to be done on that.
Okay.
And the seafood business, I think in general, is a little behind the times when it comes to certifications. There's too many certifications in our business. Um, but certification bodies like MSC and ASC have done like really good job in trying to consolidate that and make sure that everybody is leaning into those certifications as a way to create a sustainable product for consumers.
Yeah, maybe it's maybe not the same likeness, but I often think even with the wild fishery in Scotland,
Yep.
do you feel on your side that taking ownership and the industry does a certification?
Yeah. Oh, listen, it's so important. On
Yeah.
the tuna side, you got to remember that there's really two main bluefin tuna fisheries around the world, right? There's the Pacific bluefin tuna, which is um, the largest part of that fishery is in Japan, and the largest market for bluefin in the world is in Japan. Um, so there's the Pacific bluefin, um, which is caught either in Japan, wild caught, but a very small percentage of it is wild caught in North American waters. And then we have our own Mexican bluefin operation, but same species as is being farmed or wild caught in Japan. And then you have the Atlantic bluefin, which their migratory pattern is again the fish are very similar in terms of their in terms of their scientific structure, but there are some differences. And then you have the Atlantic bluefin, which is mostly caught in the Mediterranean area, so Spain, Croatia, Turkey, Malta. Those would be the main players, and they've also developed a ranching style business in those countries. Um, Spain, Turkey, Malta being the largest. So, but again, the sustainability, both of those fisheries are monitored by by an international tribunal, and that tribunal is made up of scientists, government officials, and industry. And that tribunal or that group, they're the ones that set the quota for the fishery on both the Pacific side and the Atlantic side. And 20 plus years ago, both fisheries, both the Pacific bluefin tuna fishery and the Atlantic bluefin tuna fishery, um, from a quota setting perspective, were not sustainable. And so a lot of work has been done over the last 20 years to ensure that the stock of both Pacific bluefin tuna and Atlantic bluefin tuna are in good shape. And today, that all that work that's been done over 20 years and all of that monitoring has paid dividends because we're at a stage now where the stock of both of those fisheries are in such good shape that it allows for quota increases as we move forward. And
Yeah,
so that's a sign of a well managed fishery.
definitely. Yeah,
And the work that's been done by the International Tuna Tribunal has been fantastic. But again, it's a collective effort. But even when we do our own wild fishery, which usually takes place between February and May, we have observers on our boats from from both the tribunal and the Mexican government. So, it's come a long way from where it used to be.
I hope I'm not talking out of turn about the others. Just you mentioned just now, Andrew, but in my mind, I would say with you talked about the sites that
Yep.
your farm's at. You must be miles ahead of some of the other countries you mentioned as far as water, the environment, no pollution.
Yeah, I mean, I never like to speak negatively about anyone else, so I only speak positively about
Yeah,
our operation. And I would say that I think we have the most sustainable, most advanced farm in the world.
yeah,
I think we brought a lot of technology into the site itself. As an example, all of our pens, we have 30 pens on our site. Each pen is, roughly the size of a football pitch. Think of it that way. And each of those pens have automatic feeders that go into the pens with cameras so that we can ensure that obviously we're getting efficiency out of the feed, but also to make sure that fish are fed enough during the day. And we obviously want that because we want them to put on weight and we want them to put on fat because that's what we're really after in terms of the ranching part of the business. But we have, again, from a technology perspective, we have cameras on each of the pens. We have automatic cleaners that go, and it's you think of it in terms of the robot vacuums that you see in people's houses. Well, we have those on. Think of those, but in a much larger scale. We have those on the farm, and that's how we clean our pens. And why do we do it that way? Well, it puts way less stress on the fish itself when they're in their pens. So a traditional way of cleaning pens is you send divers down and you have to lift the pens out of the water and you have to spray them. Tremendous amount of stress on the fish while you're doing that, but you have to clean the pens, right? You have to keep them clean so that the fish are in a good environment. Well, we've brought technology like that to the farm. It's there's an economic benefit because obviously it's more efficient to clean that way, but it's also there's a huge benefit in terms of the quality of the farm and the quality of life that the fish have when they're there.
it sounds fantastic. But the one thing that's in my mind when you mention that about, and it's just making me think, it's not like a farmer in a field with cattle or sheep or whatever, and he can see if they're gaining weight. Does the camera is all you need to actually, can you see that they're gaining weight?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. I mean,
Wow.
the cameras use artificial intelligence that, and you think about the farm, so there's the 30 pens that are in the ocean, but we have cameras that we use for the feeding side of the business, but most importantly, we use that information to monitor what is their weight gain, how many fish are in each pen. So, you want to have an accurate count for that. You want to monitor their health overall, and so that all gets fed into a computer system, which is at the farm. So we have a main vessel that houses the people that work at the farm. So there's about around 30 people that live at the farm. Those are both, anyone, and some of those people are the people that manage the artificial intelligence and computer systems that monitor all of those things: fish health, feeding, how much weight that they're putting on, when is the right time to harvest them, all of those things.
That's really impressive. I
Yeah.
take it with the old comment when people would talk about farmed seafood is inferior quality. I would take that's a perception outdated now, is it?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, well, first of all, I think the average consumer, you and I are not the average seafood consumer because we're in the business, but I think the latest overall is somewhere around 70 to 75% of all seafood consumed around the world is aquaculture based. And that percentage is growing because of course there's growing population, and there's a lot of pressure on the wild fisheries around the world, changing water temperatures, everything else. So aquaculture is going to be a very important. It's going to continue to grow in terms of its percentage of the overall amount of seafood that gets brought to consumers.
Yeah. How important is culinary innovation in changing public attitudes towards responsible farm seafood?
Oh, I think it's. I mean, chefs. So on the food service side of the business, uh, chefs in general, in a growing way, are demanding more sustainable seafood. So there's that pressure there, from the chef side of the business or the culinary side of the business. And then on the retail side, we only service today. We're almost exclusively a food service business. So all of our fish end up in restaurants. None of what we produce today goes to retail, and that's not to say that that's not a white space for our business. I think it is. But so in our business, when we talk to chefs, they that's some of the first questions they ask. They can make decisions on the quality of your fish by cutting it and cooking it and eating it. But whether we talk to a national chain or whether we talk to a chef at a Michelin star restaurant or a white tablecloth restaurant, they want to know about our farm and what we're doing and how we're raising our fish. That's a big factor in them determining whether or not they buy our fish or somebody else's. Uh, so
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
yeah, no, it's the culinary side of the business is very focused on the what you're doing to raise those fish or catch those fish.
Yeah. And from a culinary perspective, again, what defines truly high quality seafood today?
Yeah, I mean, um, beyond sustainability, I think one of the big elements, especially when it comes to aquaculture, is Freshness, obviously, our business is one of the big benefits of our business. The largest market for our fish is in the U.S. So I'll answer your question this way. And so we have the benefit of being very close to the U.S. And so our supply chain into the U.S. market is there's a very short time frame. We can harvest fish on a Saturday, and it's in somebody's restaurant on a Monday or Tuesday. But that's important because uh, the the freshness of the fish, from a culinary perspective, is very important, especially with a species like bluefin tuna, who and that fish has a shorter shelf life as it relates to freshness. So freshness is a big one. I think um, obviously the sustainability piece which we talked about, and within the sustainability piece, what are the fish being fed from an aquaculture perspective? Your supply chain is very important. So in our case, from the time the fish is harvested to the time that it shows up in a box to a distributor, how is that fish being treated along the way? So, are you icing it as soon as it comes out of the water, which of course we are?
Yeah.
Are you keeping the fish chilled throughout the supply chain process? Because that of course is leads to quality, and so chefs, distributors, customers, they want to know about your supply chain. Uh, Also, they want to know about traceability. And again, in our case, we we trace as soon as our fish land at the farm all the way to the customer. We trace every single one of those fish, and we actually have a QR tag that's attached to the head of our fish, where the customer can go on and just scan the QR code, and they can see when the fish landed at the farm, how long it was there, when it was harvested. We grade each of our fish, so we each one of our fish is graded for fat content, so they can see the grading of that fish, and then they can also see the temperature as it goes along the supply chain route. So traceability, sustainability, supply chain, all really important from a differentiation point.
When you talk about the fat content, can you control that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the that's what ranching is all about, quite frankly, is managing both the size of the fish, but most importantly, in our business, in the bluefin tuna business, is trying to create fat content which is sought after by chefs. That's
Yeah.
really what they're after, and that's one of our big points of differentiation, is that we have probably the best fat content of any bluefin tuna in the world. And again, it goes back to, that's not by accident. That's because of our farming operations. It goes back to the fact that we're feeding them high fat sardines, which is what they eat in the wild. And so through our farming and feeding operations, we're able to provide that fat content. But absolutely, it's very prescriptive in terms of how we go about it. And now the we when we catch bluefin, I'll give you an average size, like a trailing 3-year average size, and I'll do it in kgs if that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so the average size of a fish that lands on our farm is around between 70 and 80 kgs. So uh, now they do have a certain amount of fat content because they're grown fish. They're not juveniles. They're
Yeah.
they're they're well into their
Mature.
maturity cycle, so they do have some fat. What we do, now the average size fish that we harvest is somewhere around 130, 140 kgs. So that growth is both fat content,
Yeah.
and also obviously just size of the fish. So and they typically stay on the farm somewhere around a year. So it takes some depending on what size they were going in, anywhere between 8 and 12 months before they get harvested.
From the way you describe that, Andrew, it sort of got me thinking on the so-called health experts who are trying to, you hear them talking about us losing weight and being healthier, and they'll tell us to cut out fat, and they'll be taking the fat off meat and things, and
Yep.
they're just losing the flavour.
Well, like I said, the Toro piece of the bluefin tuna is what chefs really go after because that's for both flavor and texture, and that's the most. Also, it's a lot different than salmon, as an example. On the salmon side, the belly side of the salmon, which is the fat piece, is the cheaper part of the fish, whereas in bluefin, that's actually the most expensive part of the fish.
Well, is that not just speak volumes? And you said salmon. That's bluefin and salmon. Our wild whitefish is mostly whitefish. Our wild fishery here, we cod.
Yep.
If I, in fact, the way I'll describe it slightly differently, Andrew. I would just say I had a restaurant here at a project. He ran it for 20 years, seafood only, seafood
Yep.
restaurant. If I had, just say I got cod off a fishing boat that just landed, I would be cutting it and portioning it for the restaurant.
Yep.
The belly, I took it home.
Yeah, no, exactly. Delicious. Delicious.
That's
Or
where
the
the flavor was.
or the cheeks or the tongue.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
definitely. Yeah. Can farm seafood now genuinely compete with premium wild seafood for flavor and texture?
Oh, I mean, in our business, there's no comparison, really. I mean, the ranching side or the aquaculture side of the business is uh, is the vast majority of what high end chefs want. And this is it's a very expensive fish to buy. So we are in sort of the very high value part of the chain. And so we are dealing with, omakase style restaurants, high end Japanese style restaurants, or high end white tablecloth or steakhouse restaurants, and they absolutely want farmed bluefin because of the consistency. They know what they're going to be able to get. It's consistent year round, which is very important to them. And again, it goes back to they know that the farming practices can deliver the a better quality, taste, and texture than what they can get in the wild.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And what role do feed, water quality, and farming methods play in the final eating experience?
Oh, it's everything. Like I said, I mean, uh, how the fish is caught, how the fish is taken care of and fed at the farm. What does the supply chain look like out of that? Those are all elements that we're able to sell our fish. We have high demand for our fish at a very high cost. And why is that? We never have to discount our fish. All of the fish that we raise and then harvest are all graded superior A. So we have almost no defects, almost no B graded fish. And then we have that consistency 365 days a year. So if
Yeah.
you're a restaurant owner, if you're a seafood distributor, you know that you're going to get the same quality 365 days a year, and you know that that fish is going to be available, and you know that it's again one of my biggest selling points when I talk to either current customers or prospective customers is our farming practices as it relates to um, emulating their environment as much as we can in a farming in a ranching environment leads to just the highest quality fish. But if you don't do all of those, all of the things that you mentioned, whether it's the how you catch them, how you treat them at the farm, stocking density, are they living in a water temperature and environment that allows them to thrive? What are they eating while they're there? What are your harvest methods? We just got certified what's called the Ikejime certification method, which essentially means that you are humanely taking care of your fish, but you're also humanely harvesting them. So when you're about to bring them to market, that you're doing it in a way that doesn't cause any stress on the fish, and they go from swimming in the ocean to the harvest boat in a very short period of time, seconds.
From the way you're describing it, Andrew, what's coming to my mind is I think your stock are living a happy life.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
and
Yeah.
that's bound to come out in the flavour.
Oh,
They're they're not stressed.
they're not mutually exclusive. They're tied at the hip. Um, you how you treat your fish and how you feed your fish uh, is 100% linked to the quality of the fish that you're able to sell. And so my job in some ways is easy because of our farming operation and what a great job that they do, because I know that when our fish go to market, I'm not going to have any pushback from customers.
Yeah, which is amazing.
Yeah.
It's one of the things that really it's completely my unqualified mind, but one of the things that I find surprising, and you'll probably say, well, there's no reason to or need to feel surprised, but when you mention obviously your product is tuna, bluefin tuna,
Yeah.
I was really surprised earlier when Japan's not your market. If you asked me, I would have said it was the only market,
Yeah.
almost.
Yeah. Well, that used to be the case. So
Okay.
the Japanese market is the largest in the world. And I'll just give you like rough figures to give you a reference point. So the consumption of bluefin tuna in Japan is in and around 75,000 metric tons a year.
Wow.
The consumption of bluefin tuna in the United States, obviously a much bigger country, is about 7,500 metric tons a year. So it's 10%. So the consumption in the US is only 10% of what the consumption is in Japan. Now, having said that, the consumption in Japan is declining because it's a declining population, and therefore the consumption. And there are other alternatives that have been introduced over the years, but the consumption in Japan is flat to declining, whereas the U.S. the consumption has ramped up considerably in the last 5 to 10 years. And the reason for that is that there's been a real explosion of two things: omakase style restaurants. So those are traditional Japanese restaurants. Um, there's been a lot of growth on that side of the business, and then just overall consumption of sushi in the U.S. Has grown significantly. So that's grown the consumer base, and the U.S. bluefin tuna business today is growing at around 15 to 20% a year. So um, to your point, when Baja first started 20 years ago, 100% of that product was being shipped to Japan.
Yeah.
Today, only about 20% of our business is in Japan. And Japan is again, it's a much bigger market. It's a much more complicated market because the other driver of the Japanese business is that about 60% of that consumption is super frozen tuna. And what do I mean by that? So they catch the tuna immediately, um, freeze them whole at -80, and then they stay at -80 Celsius, -80 Celsius, until they're sold. Uh, the that super frozen business doesn't exist anywhere else in the world because you need the infrastructure in place in order to allow that supply chain to exist. So in Japan, there's super frozen storage from on a mass storage level, and then there's super frozen trucks that transport it, and then there's super frozen freezers in seafood distribution outlets. That infrastructure doesn't exist anywhere else in the world. So the 7,500 metric tons that I told you about in the U.S., that is 100% sold fresh. So
Yeah.
there is no frozen bluefin tuna business. Not to say that there won't be at some stage, but right now the business is 100% fresh, whereas Japan is 10 times as big, and there's also a large portion of that which is the super frozen side of the business. And of course they have the auction in Japan and in Tokyo, and again, it's a way more mature business than it is in the U.S. or in Europe for that matter.
I mean, you sometimes hear of fish, or put it the other way, from the catcher's point of view, they would sell a fish to Japan and they were made for life.
Yeah, there. I think some of that is a little exaggerated, but
Okay.
that there, but no, you're. It is true that the market, the Toyoso market, which is where the auction is, which takes place, I think it's 5 days a week. So a lot of the wild caught bluefin around the world is sold through that market. And so prize catches of bluefin, with the right fat content can fetch, uh, you know, you could get, in some cases, you can get, 40, $50,000 for a fish. Um, but in general, the market is supplied by a mix of uh, farms. So there's thousands of bluefin tuna farms in Japan, and wild caught. Yeah.
Uh, yeah, yeah. And are chefs becoming more open minded about responsibly farmed seafood?
Japan, you talk about Japan?
No, sorry, chefs.
Oh, chefs, no, oh, absolutely. Well, they're not only more open-minded, but I think they're demanding it,
Okay.
because they want to be able to put on their menus that
Yeah.
the seafood that they're serving consumers is responsibly sourced. So, yeah, no, it's not just open-minded. Again, they're demanding. If you There's a certification in the U.S. It's called Monterey Bay Aquarium. I don't know if you've ever heard of that, but
No.
it's an NGO certification. Many chefs in the U.S. use that as a sort of barometer as to what fish that they're going to buy. But they look at things like MSC and ASC and BAP and all of those certifications. Those are definitely more meaningful to the chef community than they ever have been before.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know you're not dealing direct with a consumer or retail, but have consumers become more educated about the quality, or are they still very much sort of driven by price?
I think that I think there's a shift that's taking place, and that shift is driven by younger consumers. So as
Okay.
they enter into buying their own food, going to restaurants, they demand more sustainable products because that's how they grew up, and obviously the whereas 10, 15 years ago you really just sort of relied on um, what either a retailer or a restaurant told you. Well, you and I both know how quick it is just to check on your phone and get a reference as to, hey, what am I eating here? Where is it from? Is it truly sustainably sourced?
Yeah.
So the demands of the newer consumer, I think, are going to put more pressure on the seafood industry to continue to ensure that the products that they're bringing to market are sustainable, more responsible. And otherwise, people are going to walk away from the category. And in the seafood world, we've all been talking about the same things for a long time, which is how do you grow seafood? It's a healthy protein. Um, and quite frankly, there hasn't been any growth in seafood for a long time. I think one of the ways that seafood can grow in the future is really owning that sustainability piece to the end consumer, um, and demonstrating to them no different than what poultry has done, or no different than what the beef industry has done to continue to attract consumers to that space. Seafood really needs to kind of get their act together when it comes to that.
I know you've already said that you don't like being negative about others, and I don't either, but I have to say, with my heart of hearts, when lovely seafood that you're talking about and all the work you're doing on it and putting into it, why a chicken? Who would want to have a chicken before some of your lovely seafood?
Yeah. Well, again, that's the responsibility lies with the industry when it comes to that. And so that's obvious to me or you, but it's not obvious to everyday consumers. You see that in seafood sales, which have been stagnant for a long time. And so, it's about creating the right story for future consumers so that they do gravitate more towards seafood. Because, as you said, it does have such a great foundational story. It is a healthy protein.
Yeah.
There's so many seafoods that provide, whether it be omega-3 or the protein side of it in itself, which is obviously a huge trend with consumers. So we're well positioned from an industry perspective. We're just not taking advantage of it.
Yeah, indeed. I was going to ask you, is there any trends that you're seeing emerging globally right now? But I think you've already mentioned that. The fact that the American market is growing so much compared to the Japanese market now.
Yeah, well, I mean that's specific to bluefin, and I'm thankfully in the bluefin tuna business these days. But it's you can't really rest on your laurels or on your heels when it comes to that. Those growth rates will level off at some stage. So what do you do today, whether it be from an innovation perspective? How do we bring bluefin into the retail environment or into different restaurant sectors? So that's a lot of the work that I'm doing today to try to prepare the business for the future so that we do continue to grow the consumer base for bluefin. Again, we have the luxury of being in a business that's growing today. Um, but you can't always assume that those growth rates are going to go on forever. So you really gotta carve out more innovative options for the consumer going forward.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier about younger consumers changing the seafood market with their sustainability expectations. Is that
Yep.
very, very much the case, is it?
Yeah, I think it's the case overall. It doesn't really impact per se my business today. But again, as we try to expand the customer and consumer base for this business, the sustainability side of it is going to be important as we build out that story and build out those products.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How important is traceability becoming in the premier seafood market?
No, it's extremely important.
Yeah.
I speak, look, customers, when I say customers, I mean seafood distributors or national chains. They demand traceability when it comes to products that you're selling to them. So it's not a trend. It's not a nice to have. It's a must have, really, as you move forward. So if you want sophisticated customers that are going to pay premium for your product, traceability is a must have.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And as well as that, with your site and your ranching, does seasonality play a part?
No, not really. I mean, there is some seasonality with it on the consumer side, but for bluefin tuna, it would just fall under the regular seasonality of when restaurants sell more, so holidays, that sort of thing. But from a farming and perspective, there is no seasonality, and that's one of the benefits of where our farm is that we have very moderate changes in our water temperature, and so therefore it allows us to really to ranch and harvest fish um, 365 days a year. And on top of that, we have, I think in the last 2 years, we might have had one day where we weren't able to harvest because of weather. So that, which is pretty incredible. Uh,
Yeah.
whether it's wild fishery or whether it's even aquaculture businesses, you know, uh, harvesting schedules can be changed pretty significantly by weather events, but we're just in such a great place when it comes to not only the farming side of it, but the weather as well. So we don't
Yeah.
have any seasonality in our business, but obviously seasonality or weather patterns are significant when it comes to other seafood producers.
Would the tuna have a spawning cycle?
They would, but where we catch them and the size that we catch them at,
Okay. Yeah.
we don't have to deal with spawning cycle.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
our tuna don't spawn um, when they're in at our farms. So it's not an issue that we have to deal with.
Yeah. Could technology eventually allow consumers to know the exact origin and environmental footprint of the fish they buy? I think you've maybe answered that. That
Yeah,
you've
oh,
probably
it's
you're
already
in.
happening. It's
I was
already
gonna
happening.
say,
Yeah, I mean, look, you know, well, for us today, it is happening because now I'm not speaking to the end consumer. I'm speaking to our main customers, which are seafood distributors, who buy our fish and then value add it and deliver it. But if we were to ever, as an example, enter retail, we could use our traceability system to allow for basically blockchain technology that a consumer could just go on and scan the QR code of the package that they buy, and they'll be able to see the whole story about the fish that they're about to buy. So that technology exists today, and I think it's going to be important for seafood players to adopt that as part of their selling strategy, because I do think that the future consumer is going to demand that.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Of which I'll give you a list. Which innovation excites you most? Offshore farming, AI monitoring, alternative feeds, genetics, and low impact systems.
Oh, I think offshore farming is the way of the future. I
Yeah,
think to me, I mean, all of the other things that you mentioned are obviously important, but the breakthrough for aquaculture in general is going to be the formulas where you can successfully, and when I say successfully, I mean from a from a financial perspective. I think many of the species that are in aquaculture today are proven viable from a farming perspective when it comes to offshore farming, but they're not viable from a financial perspective. The costs associated with offshore farming are so significant that people can't make any money doing it. But obviously, there's a tremendous amount of capital being deployed against innovations that will allow for offshore farming. So like I said earlier, we're already doing that. We have a species that allows for that and allows for it to be done in a way where you can make money. When you look at other species, it's not there yet, but obviously, um, farms are going to have to leave near shore and go offshore if they want to survive long term. So that to me, I think, is the place where I think there can be the most growth in the business overall. I think on the AI side, we're using AI today in a lot of our farming practices. So, just from the sorting of the fish when it comes to the farm, to monitoring the fish health and fish size when it's at the farm. But obviously, AI is going to be explosive as it relates to farming practices going forward.
Yeah, it's really fantastic because I'm maybe at an advantage in a way from I can fully get what you say, Andrew, because my age, I can remember the early days of the of fish farming starting in Scotland.
Yeah.
And we have, you've possibly been in some of them, sea loch, we call them sea lochs, which in Scandinavian countries they would call them fjords.
Yep.
You know, they have their seawater, and there's a good water displacement, there's
Yep.
good depth, and they would have the cages right down at the in the sea lochs because they
Yep.
had shelter. And like you say now, you'll hardly ever see that in Scotland now. They're all offshore,
Yeah.
or
Oh,
or maybe not offshore to the extent that you are,
yeah.
but they're certainly out the lochs.
Oh, absolutely. And you look at Norway, which is the largest producer of salmon around the world, or Chile for that matter, and which is the second largest. And there's the government is really pressuring companies there to advance technology to get farms away from the shore and out to sea. And so, again, that's the reason why all that capital is being deployed in innovation to try to drive that. Again, if I go back to our own business, yes, we're offshore. Yes, we have a fabulous farm, but our operations team and our farm team are always looking for ways to either use technology or new innovation to improve our farm. So, it's perpetual innovation to try to drive efficiencies and to try to get a better product at the farm. I think that we have the best bluefin tuna product in the world, but I also know that that there's a team behind the business that is always trying to make it better. So that's the magic.
Can ocean farming scale globally without compromising the ecosystem?
Well, I think that's where the offshore farming comes in. And I think,
Yeah.
that needs to happen in order to be able to scale the business. I hate to keep going back to salmon farming, but it's the largest. Well, that and shrimp are the two largest aquaculture businesses. But as salmon continues to grow, there are no more traditional sites available. They just don't exist anymore. So if they want to grow, they're going to have to create sites offshore. In our business in Bluefin, as we continue to grow, even in our own business, we look out 5, 10 years from now, and we know that we've got to start now working with governments, start now working with stakeholders to ensure that we have future sites available. that we can continue to grow our business on. So, our site today is not at capacity, but it will be at some stage. So you have to work with the stakeholders to get new concessions. But that work's got to be done now for 5, 10 years from now.
Yeah, yeah. Are regulations keeping pace with the speed of innovation?
Well, I think to be honest with you, I think that regulations is what's driving innovation, really. The regulatory environment around aquaculture is forcing more innovation in terms of farming practices. And I just keep going back to the offshore piece, but the reason that the offshore farming is the future is because the availability to do it near shores just won't be there. And that's driven by regulatory. So the governments around the world are saying, hey, if you want to continue to farm or if you want to continue to grow, we're not going to create new sites near shore. You're going to have to create technologies that allows you to do it offshore. Now, in many cases, part of the industry's response is to try to do land-based. So using land-based technology to emulate what you can do in the ocean. The problem with that is that hasn't proven to be an economically viable model today. Some of the largest land-based aquaculture businesses around the world have been failures. And so the technology is and the capital is being driven towards trying to find a land-based model that works. But in the event that that doesn't work, then obviously you have to continue to do it in the ocean, and to do that you have to have innovation and technologies that allows you to do it offshore.
And do you ever have to work at avoiding, and just for the like of industrial efficiencies, coming at the expense of the quality?
In our business, quality is paramount, and
Yeah.
so again, I know I've said this a couple of times already to you, but we feed our fish 100% fresh sardines. And that's the foundation of our business. It would be easy to walk away from that at certain times of the year. It would be easy to look at alternative feeds, but the foundation of the quality of the fish that we have starts with that feed. And so, yeah, are there cheaper ways that we could feed our fish and drive a higher margin? Yes. Is it more difficult at certain times of the year to catch fresh feed and feed our fish? Yes. But again, longer term, the health of the brand, the health of the business, and the quality of the fish that we produce 365 days a year is all based on our quality. And so we never walk away from that, even if it gets difficult.
Yeah, no, respect that because you've what you're actually saying there, I feel, Andrew, is you've made a standard and you won't compromise on it.
Absolutely not. No. And like I said, I don't speak poorly of others, but
Yeah,
that's not the standard that other people have, even within the bluefin business. So, but again, I can charge higher prices for my fish than my competitors. And the reason for that is they know that they're going to get the highest quality.
yeah.
Yeah.
As someone who worked in seafood hospitality myself, I understand the importance of consistency. Is consistency one of the biggest advantages your modern
Yeah.
farming offers, chef?
Oh, absolutely. I mean that's it, right? I mean the consistency is tied to the quality, but consistency not only in the quality of the fish, but consistency in availability of the fish. They know that on Monday morning they can order our fish and it's going to be in their restaurant on Wednesday, and they know that it was just harvested. Um, um, within 24 to 48 hours of that. So, and we do that a lot. Like we are constantly bringing our customers out to our farm so they can experience it. And so we spend a lot of time and effort making sure that our customer base gets to go out and see the farm and experience it and see our harvest process. And then bring them back to our processing facility 8 hours later in the middle of the night and show them the care and quality that we take in processing that fish and boxing it up for them. So that's an experience that they'll always remember. And that, of course, pays dividends in terms of keeping customers longer term.
Yeah. And do you feel how much influence chefs actually have in shaping sustainable seafood choices?
Yeah, well, I mean, ultimately, they're determining what goes on their menu. And so, again, as sustainability becomes more important, not only to chefs but to their patrons or their customers, then they're the ultimate decision makers in a lot of ways. And so, yeah, absolutely. I mean, they want to understand where that fish is coming from and how has it been farmed or how has it been caught, and so it plays a big role.
That's interesting. Yeah. Do you think restaurants explain seafood provenance well enough to their customers?
Short answer, no. Again, I think that's another something else that the industry has to take on. And so I think provenance, I think sustainability, I think even down to, is this a fresh caught fish or is it a frozen fish? Those are not really well. I think a lot of the traceability rules that are being put in place, and I think a lot of the work, in particular in the U.S., that the NFI, which is the National Fisheries Institute, is doing as it relates to traceability, has really pushed that issue quite significantly. But I still think there's a lot of work to do with like collaboration between the industry, being the seafood industry, and restaurant chains to properly market seafood. I think there's a lot of work to be done there.
Yeah, yeah. And well, would normally ask this question about species because multi-species fisheries like us, what species do you think are underrated from a culinary perspective? But I would also like if we could ask you that, Andrew, with the different parts of the body of a tuna,
Yep.
would you are they very different?
Oh, well, for bluefin, yes. There's really three distinct products that you get from a bluefin tuna. You get the akami piece, which is the red meat part of the fish. Um, so that's one part. Then you get what's called the otoro part of the fish, which is kind of a blend between the top loin and the bottom loin of the fish. So it's kind of a more marbled piece of the fish. So you get some fat content and some lean part of the fish. And then you have what I talked about earlier, which is the most valuable and most sought after part of our fish, which is the toro piece, which is the belly loin of the fish, or the fatty part of the fish. And that's really, really sought after, in particular by omakase chefs across the world, because when they do if you go to an omakase restaurant, you usually get all three parts of a bluefin tuna as part of a dish or a serving, and they eat completely differently. They taste differently. They have different texture. So you really get three distinct products out of one bluefin tuna.
Okay.
It's a really cool fish.
Yeah, and there's a big thing going around now. I don't know if there's much of it over your way, but there's been one in Iceland. They call it the Ocean Cluster,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a Scottish one set up now. It's about obviously you trying. I don't suppose you'd ever get there, but 100% of the fish
Yeah.
is what would say a chef buying a whole bluefin tuna?
They would use
What kind of yield would he get?
Oh, they use almost it has almost 100% yield.
Wow, it's
Yeah.
brilliant.
Yeah. Well, even the fish itself from it's a very high yielding fish from a processing perspective because you got to think of the fish of when it's harvested, it's all meat. I mean, there's not much, there's not much of a skeleton to the fish. It's really all meat. And so we sell our fish head on, tail on, and it's just gilled and gutted or G&G fish, but we leave the head on, the tail on. Uh, Chefs use the meat from the head. They use meat throughout, so it's a very, very high yielding fish.
That's really
Yeah,
fantastic. Yeah.
yeah.
And is that the case? Would it be the same wild?
Uh, it it would still be a high yielding fish, not as much.
Yeah.
But yeah, bluefin tuna in general is a very high yielding fish, and you can really use all parts of it in different, even even the spine. And we have a customer that we're shipping to in the U.S. today that only wants the bluefin tuna eye. So they use the eyes as a dish. And so we sell them the whole head, but they're really after the eye itself as sort of the product that they serve on their menu.
Sorry, I didn't catch when you said they. Who is there any a particular type of customer looking for the eye?
Yeah, no, there is, like I said, like it's people that, like think of very high-end Michelin star restaurants, those type of restaurants, and they use the eye as one of the dishes because it's so sought after.
It's funny you should say that because my father used to tell us when they were young, and obviously cod, they would have cod. And now there was a family, my father, there were seven brothers and two sisters, big families then, and they would be fighting over whose turn it was to get the eye of the
Yeah,
cod.
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
That's good. That's good. Do you feel the seafood sector is getting better at balancing environmental responsibility with commercial reality?
Oh, that's a big question. I think there's been tremendous work done when it comes to that balance. But again, that goes hand in hand with what I said earlier, which is uh, being able to promote yourself as a sustainable fishery or as a sustainable product also goes hand in hand with the balancing that environmental aspect. So we always like to say in our company that um, you know, first and foremost, we're stewards of the ocean. And so we need to take care of the ocean. We need to take care of where we farm our fish. And if you don't take care of that, then you're not going to have a good environment to raise fish longer term. And so I think the industry, in particular the aquaculture industry, has figured that out over time that you need to take care of where you're raising fish.
Yeah. Is how important is animal welfare becoming in aquaculture
No, it's
discussions?
extremely important. I mean,
Yeah.
it's one of the main pillars of our farming operation is animal welfare, from the catching side of it all the way to the farming side of it. And as I said to you earlier, we just got the highest standard that you can get around the world, which is called an Ikijimi standard certification, and that's all about animal welfare. And we had to have their team out to our farm. They spent a couple of days there, sort of monitoring our activities, monitoring how we treat the fish when it's there, how we treat it when we harvest them. And so, absolutely, I mean, animal welfare, and especially these days, I mean, It only takes one person with a camera to go out and film what you're doing, and that can damage your brand for years.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, no, it's extremely important.
Yeah. Going back to the previous point, I was just thinking when you said it, it's a term that's used here a lot, Andrew. An environmental, well, going to the science,
Yep.
there's a vast difference between an environmental scientist and a fisheries scientist.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, big difference.
Yeah.
So, but again, you don't have to look far. You can look at other industries and under other industries that have thrived by being seen as sustainable, seen as being environmental stewards. And if you're not on the right side of that, then it's going to be very difficult going forward to build a profitable business.
Yeah. Do you feel the seafood industry has a, or is helping feed a growing population?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's one of the best sources of protein that you can get. And so it's going to play a really important role in a growing population. How important is really up to the industry itself. And like I said, the seafood sales in general have been stagnant for many years. And I think the industry really needs to ask itself why that is with a growing population, with the sort of desperate need for more protein around the world. So and that's, part of the response to that has obviously been the growth in aquaculture. But I think, again, all of the things that we've been talking about for the last hour and a half when it comes to sustainability and when it comes to perception of seafood, I still think there's a lot of work to be done to take a bigger share of that pie going forward.
Yeah. Are you confident premium quality seafood still remains accessible and affordable?
Yes, I think in general it does. I think again, if you look, I mean, look, all the cost of food is going up everywhere. So I don't think that that's any different in seafood than it is anywhere else. So food affordability is obviously an issue. I think seafood remains within the context of overall proteins, whether it be chicken or beef or pork, it still remains a very viable product from an affordability perspective.
Okay. And for the future of seafood, how do you see your production look in 20 years from now?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a tremendous amount of growth for bluefin, not only in places like Western Europe and the United States, but one of our sales strategies is to grow in developing markets. So we've set up customers in Brazil and Colombia, Chile. We're starting to service almost all Latin American markets, and we see that as a big growth platform going forward. I also think innovation is going to come into play, and like I said earlier, that almost all of the bluefin today in the U.S. in particular is fresh, and it's mostly high end Japanese style omakase restaurants. But I think there's a tremendous opportunity to grow out to other customer segments, consumer segments. So I'm very bullish on where bluefin can go as a species. And when you look at our production platform, I don't see any reason that we won't be able to double our business in the next 4 to 5 years.
Okay. Well, do you see in any way traditional wild fisheries and modern aquaculture could become more connected or more competitive?
Oh, I think they're gonna have to be more connected, and you can see that. Like, look at cod as an example. You referenced cod a couple of times. Well, what's happened to the cod supply in the last 2 years? It's drastically been reduced because the quotas on wild caught cod are going down. So there are, as you know, there's many cod farming operations that are coming on stream. And again, it's to meet um, the over demand and undersupply of that business. Same thing goes with tuna. I mean, we're the greatest example of the we're really the only fishery in the world that combines pure wild fishery with a aquaculture bolt on basically. And so, if you look at bluefin tuna, is the perfect example of the cooperation of both the wild fishery and aquaculture. But I certainly think that as aquaculture becomes even more prevalent than it is today, then they're not really competitors. They're just part of it's just part of a larger industry.
And do you feel that farming, sorry, ocean farming could eventually reduce pressure on wild fish stocks?
Yeah, of course. I mean, again, I go back to what I said earlier. I think 70 to 75 of production today is aquaculture based. Aquaculture is a relatively new way of farming. It's really only been around in any sort of significant way for the last, let's call it 25 years. Um, Whereas people have been fishing wild for thousands of years. So yeah, I mean, you can see that a relatively new technology, which is aquaculture, is now 75% of what's produced around the world. That's only going to get larger as a percentage as population grows and there's the need for more protein. So again, I don't see it as competing elements.
Yeah,
I think they're just part of a an overall seafood industry, and there in many ways you see much more cooperation between the two sides of the businesses and the ownership of the businesses. If you look at a lot of the global seafood companies today, they are both they have aquaculture pieces to their business and they have wild caught fisheries to their business. And so there's not that segmentation. The consolidation within the industry uh, means that whether you're a multinational Japanese company or you're a multinational North American company, your products and your supply is both aquaculture and wild today.
yeah, that's a good way of putting that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Is there anything that excites you about the future of seafood?
Well, I think it's just everything that we've been talking about. I think you can kind of hear the excitement in my voice, which is I think there's a great opportunity for seafood to take a bigger share of that sort of need for more protein around the world, and think there's every opportunity just because of the story behind seafood, and it's a healthy protein that's needed around the world, and how that's presented will be the key as to how much share of that pie seafood can get longer term.
Yeah. And is there any misconceptions people have about modern ocean farming?
I don't. I think there's obviously a lot of misperceptions. I mean, and I think that's mostly based on past practices. I think again, the industry needs to do a better job of promoting itself and all of the things that they're doing when it comes to responsible, environmentally friendly, sustainable practices. And so I think I think it's more obviously there's always work to be done to try to improve on that, but I do think that the technology and the work that's being done when it comes to sustainability is probably would, if properly presented, would dispel a lot of those myths.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if there is there anything you would, if you had the opportunity to change about the world, the way the world thinks about seafood, what would it be?
Well, again, I think it's just it's changing perception. I think it's changing perception around how important aquaculture is as part of the overall seafood business. There's still some headwinds from a consumer acceptance perspective when it comes to that. So I think there's a lot of opportunity to continue to advance that story and be able to present that to tomorrow's consumer.
And if I was to, something that concerns me, which maybe is not relevant the same with the way you described tuna, but modern seafood consumption is how heavily the market focuses on only a few premier cuts of
Yeah,
fish,
yeah.
particularly tuna. Is that something that you feel is relevant?
Not really. I mean, I think, you know, there's been a lot of advancement in terms of equipment technology that have allowed for more variability in terms of cuts. So, there's some really impressive innovations around equipment manufacturing as it relates to the production of either fresh or frozen seafood. So I don't see that as being a barrier to growth. I think that's sort of helped as it relates to offering consumers different cuts.
Which underused parts of tuna do you believe deserve greater culinary attention?
Well, we do a lot of work from a marketing perspective to really highlight different parts of the tuna that can be used. I reference we have customers that want tuna eyes. We do a lot of culinary work, and when I say culinary work, like coming up with recipe ideas for chefs around different parts of the head meat. But in general, as I said before, tuna is a really high yielding fish. So a lot of what we put in that box at the end of the day gets used in one way or the other.
Yeah. Could better utilization of tuna improve both sustainability and profitability at the same time?
Yeah, I mean, and that's what we work on, that yielding side of the business. That obviously, the more of that fish that you can use, the more profitable it is. That goes for really any species. So yeah, no, we're constantly looking at ways to, and we've got some new product development underway that we're trying to utilize some other parts of the fish that aren't being used in a big way today. So I think that's where innovation and culinary innovation comes into play.
Yeah. Is part of the challenge educational to explain both chefs and consumers how to appreciate different
Yep.
textures and flavors?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, our core customer base today are very well versed in bluefin tuna, but as we try to expand into other restaurant concepts, other segments of the restaurant market, there's definitely an educational piece as to, I think there's two pieces. There's an educational piece, but there's also an innovation piece. So you need to develop products that make it easier for chefs to put, or consumers in a retail setting, for them to consume your fish. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. In your view, do high-end restaurants have a responsibility to lead the way in full utilization of seafood?
You mean just in terms of the utilization of the fish? I mean, I think ultimately that's what's driving the utilization of the fish. I mean, their economics are so thin when it comes to running a restaurant. So they want to get as much out of that fish as they possibly can. And the food costs is the ultimate driver of profitability within a restaurant setting. But all restaurants operate on very thin margins. And so if you can present them products that they know that they can get almost full utilization of that fish, that's just going to help your story and it's just going to help you get on the menu.
Yeah, but I feel quite strongly about that. I know I had as I said, the restaurant myself, but I feel they should utilize more and more parts of every fish
Yep.
because I class that as part of sustainability because the restaurant has to survive so that it continues to be a customer to the farm and
Yep.
offer, offer the seafood to their customers. So,
Yep. No, I see what you're saying. I think it definitely would be helpful. I do. I also think though that it's an industry solution, and it's in my case or in our case, when we go to speak to new customers to potentially get the product on the menu, one of the parts of the sales presentation is exactly that, which is this is a product that is going to be very expensive to buy, but here's how you can utilize all of the fish, and here's what you can sell it for to your consumer. So it becomes a very profitable, attractive proposition for chefs. So, I never go into a customer presentation with, "Hey, here's our fish, and it's the best." You had to bring way more to the table than that.
yeah.
And so, coming with yielding analysis, coming with profitability analysis, showing different ways that they can put our fish on their menu to make it exciting for their patrons or their consumers is, it's part of what you need to bring to the table to stand out versus everybody else.
The only thing that I think, Andrew, when I hear you saying that, is you're going to somebody, what a position of power you have and confidence, because you're the way what you said there is you're going to tell people that yours is the best,
Hmm.
and in your heart of hearts it is the best.
Yep.
That's a
Yep.
strong position.
It is. That's why, well, I love this business, but it's not by accident. It's because of all of the pieces behind the business where I can take those 15 slides that I want to present to a new customer and I can speak very confidently on every aspect of what we're doing. The quality of the fish, the cold chain, the work that we're doing behind trying to build a brand, the farm operation, the fishing operation, and the sustainability. Like here are all the things. Today we probably are Rodrigo, who you spoke with before, who's our sustainability officer. He's got projects underway today that won't bear any fruit until 2 or 3 years from now. So he's looking out 2 or 3 years from now as ways to make our product and our brand, top of the list when it comes to sustainability. We have fishery improvement projects underway on the sardines that we catch. We're looking for MSC certification on the sardines and on the wild caught fishery. There's 5 or 6 projects at the farm to reduce waste. All of those things, they all add up to a great story.
It is a great story. I think it's a fantastic story, and I think it's been helped by James Sibley with some of the videos he's done on your sites. It's
Yeah.
just stunning, stunning.
We've had a couple. James was one. I've never met James. I'd like to meet him. I know that you're going to speak to him at some stage, so feel free to pass on my info. But I know
Yeah.
he's been to our farm. We've had a number of other social media influencers that have come to our farm recently. But again, we don't pay anybody when it comes to that. We're not paying people. It's not an advertisement. We invite
Uh,
people to come and say, "Hey, look, if you want to do a series on what we're doing, we'll take you out there and we'll show you around, but we don't have any like even with James as an example, I know we didn't have any editorial. We weren't able to change his story. It was his story.
I described him from his videos as a, you might, I don't know if you'll know, there was a toy here, Action Man,
Yeah.
kid's toy, and I described him as a real life action man. See helicopters and diving.
Yeah. Oh, exactly. Yeah, that's great.
Are there cultures or countries that already do this particularly well with the that could teach the rest of the world?
Well, I think again, in our business, it all sort of flows from what's been built in Japan. And
Yeah,
so that's kind of unique in our business. But part of the reason why I love that we still do business in Japan is because it's really kind of a badge of honor when it comes to as we bring the product to other places in the world. And to be able to say that we supply fresh bluefin tuna to the Japanese market, which you can say is the most discerning market from a consumer standpoint, that really helps us as we try to develop other markets and as we build out our brand globally. And so, we have an office in Japan. It's still a very important market for us, even though it's a smaller percentage of our overall sales. But that's really been more driven by growth elsewhere as opposed to anything else.
yeah, yeah. Andrew, where can our listeners follow you online? Are you active in
Yeah.
social media platforms?
Well, don't follow me because that would be boring. But you could follow Blue. Our brand is Bluefina. So
Okay,
we're on Instagram. You just look under the Bluefina, Bluefina, and so that's really where we concentrate most of our efforts is through our Instagram account. And then that's the brand that we sell under today. Baja Aqua Farms is the holding company, but our brand and the one that we're really putting a push when it comes to our marketing efforts is the Bluefina Instagram account.
brilliant, brilliant.
Yeah.
And before we fold up, I was just going to say to you, we mentioned we earlier about your. I couldn't believe it. I was going to be. I'm talking to Andrew Young, and he's not Scottish. That that the one thing I can say, the saving grace for you, if you were, they would be calling you Andy.
Yes, exactly. No one ever called me Andy. I think maybe a couple of teachers, but that's about it. Actually, when I was in Scotland, everybody called me Andy.
Yeah, I can imagine
Yes.
that. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that doesn't bother me. That
Okay, good. Excellent. Well, I would just thank you so much and look forward to actually, believe it or not, when you were saying about people coming to the site, Manuel in our last recording, he's actually invited me.
Oh yeah, you gotta come. I'll make sure that I'm there when you're there.
Great. Well, thank you. And
Anytime.
I'm not going to say Andy. I'm going to say Andrew Young. Thank you. Thank you so much. That's been fascinating.
Yeah.
And we'll be in touch shortly to tell, because it'll not be long till it's released. And we'll
Awesome.
be releasing the three together, Rodrigo, Manuel, yourself, and James Sibley. We're going to tie that.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, thanks, Jim. Appreciate it. Have a good day.